The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of St. Mary's Children's Hospital as Prince William adjusted his tie nervously. This wasn't his first royal visit, but something felt different today. Kate squeezed his hand gently as they walked toward the main entrance, their security detail maintaining a respectful distance. "Remember what Dr. Harrison said?" Kate whispered softly. "Some of these children haven't spoken to anyone in weeks." William nodded, his mind racing with thoughts of the young patients they were about to meet. The hospital specialized in treating children with severe trauma and emotional disorders. Many had been through experiences that no child should ever face. The royal couple had specifically requested this visit after learning about the hospital's groundbreaking work in healing young minds. As they entered the bright, cheerfully decorated lobby, William noticed how the staff had worked hard to make the space welcoming. Colorful murals covered the walls, depicting scenes of hope and healing. Children's artwork hung proudly on display boards, each piece telling a story of resilience. Dr. Sarah Harrison, the hospital's chief psychiatrist, greeted them warmly. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes that had seen too much pain but never lost their compassion. "Your Royal Highnesses, thank you so much for coming. The children are incredibly excited, though some may not show it immediately." Kate smiled, her maternal instincts already engaging. "We're honored to be here, Dr. Harrison. Please don't let us disrupt your normal routines. We want to experience what these children go through every day." As they walked down the main corridor, William observed the careful balance the hospital maintained between medical necessity and creating a home-like environment. Soft music played from speakers hidden in the ceiling, and the floors were carpeted to muffle sounds that might startle sensitive children. They passed several common rooms, where children of various ages engaged in different activities. Some were painting, others were reading quietly, and a few were working with therapists in what appeared to be play therapy sessions. William noticed that many of the children seemed withdrawn, their faces bearing the weight of experiences far beyond their years. "The children we'll meet today have all been through significant trauma," Dr. Harrison explained as they walked. "Some have lost parents in tragic circumstances. Others have survived accidents that left them emotionally scarred. What they all share is a remarkable strength that often surprises even us." Kate paused to look through a window into one of the therapy rooms. A young girl, perhaps 8 years old, sat silently while a therapist gently encouraged her to express her feelings through art. The child's drawing showed a house with no doors and windows covered with dark scribbles. "That's Emma," Dr. Harrison said quietly. "She lost her entire family in a car accident 6 months ago. She hasn't spoken since she arrived here, but her artwork tells us everything we need to know about her inner world." William felt his chest tighten as he watched the little girl work. His own children were safe at home, probably playing in the gardens of Kensington Palace, completely unaware of the suffering that existed in the world. The contrast struck him deeply. They continued their tour, stopping at the hospital's innovative sensory room, where children could experience calming lights, sounds, and textures designed to help them process their emotions safely. Several children were there, some lying on soft mats while gentle music played, others interacting with fiber optic lights that changed colors at their touch. "This is amazing," Kate observed, watching a young boy who couldn't have been more than 5 years old carefully touching different textured surfaces. "How do you measure progress in cases like these?" "Sometimes progress is measured in the smallest victories," Dr. Harrison replied. "A child who hasn't made eye contact in months suddenly looks directly at you. Someone who has been mute speaks a single word. These moments might seem insignificant to others, but to us they're miracles." As they prepared to enter the main ward where they would spend most of their visit, William paused. He could hear the sound of children's voices, some laughing, others crying softly. Behind one particular door at the end of the hallway, he noticed complete silence. "What's in that room?" he asked, pointing toward the quiet door. Dr. Harrison followed his gaze, and her expression grew more serious. That's where we keep our most challenging cases, children who have completely withdrawn from the world. We call it the sanctuary room. Kate looked at William, recognizing the expression on her husband's face. It was the same look he got whenever he encountered someone who needed help but felt powerless to provide it. She knew he was already thinking about how they could make a difference in these children's lives. "Could we visit that room as well?" William asked. Dr. Harrison hesitated. "Your Royal Highness, I must warn you. The children in that room may not respond to your presence at all. Some haven't acknowledged visitors in months. It can be quite affecting for people who aren't used to working with such severe cases." William straightened his shoulders, the same determination that had carried him through military service, now focusing on these vulnerable children. "Doctor, if these children are patients in your hospital, then they deserve just as much attention as any others. Perhaps more so, given their circumstances." Kate nodded in agreement. "We're here to learn and to help however we can. Please don't shield us from the full reality of what these children experience." Dr. Harrison smiled for the first time since they'd arrived. "Very well. But first, let me introduce you to some of our children who are doing better. They've been looking forward to meeting you, and their progress stories might help prepare you for what you'll see in the sanctuary room." As they walked toward the main ward, William couldn't shake the image of that silent door at the end of the hallway. Something about it called to him, as if whatever lay beyond it would change his understanding of suffering and healing forever. He had no idea that behind that door waited a vision that would move him and Kate more deeply than anything they had ever experienced in their years of royal service. The main ward buzzed with carefully controlled activity as Prince William and Kate entered. Unlike a typical hospital ward, this space felt more like a community center designed for healing. Round tables were scattered throughout the room, each surrounded by small chairs perfectly sized for children. Art supplies, books, and therapeutic toys were organized on low shelves that the young patients could reach independently. "We believe in giving these children as much control over their environment as possible," Dr. Harrison explained, watching as Kate immediately gravitated toward a table where 3 children were working on a puzzle together. "Many of them have lost all sense of agency in their lives. Here, they can choose their activities, their companions, and even when they want to be alone." William observed the careful choreography of the ward. Nurses and therapists moved quietly among the children, never forcing interactions, but always available when needed. Some children played alone, others worked in small groups, and a few sat quietly with adult mentors who seemed content to simply share their presence. Kate knelt beside the puzzle table, her natural ease with children immediately apparent. "That's a beautiful castle you're building," she said to a girl with curly red hair who looked about 7 years old. The child, whose name tag read Sophie, looked up briefly before returning her attention to the puzzle piece in her small hands. "It has a tower where the princess can be safe," she whispered, barely audible. "That sounds like a very important tower," Kate replied, her voice gentle and encouraging. She didn't push for more conversation, instead picking up a puzzle piece and examining it thoughtfully. "I think this piece might fit right here, near the princess's safe tower." Sophie glanced at Kate again, this time maintaining eye contact, for several seconds before nodding and accepting the offered piece. It was a small moment, but William noticed how Dr. Harrison made a quiet note on her tablet. Across the room, William was drawn to a boy who appeared to be about 10 years old, sitting alone at a table covered with what looked like architectural drawings. The child worked with intense concentration, his pencil moving in precise, careful lines. "Hello," William said, pulling up a small chair beside the boy. "I'm William. What are you creating there?" The boy didn't look up immediately, but his pencil paused in its movement. When he finally raised his head, William saw eyes that seemed much older than his years. "I'm designing a house," the boy said quietly. A house where bad things can't. Get in. William studied the detailed drawings spread across the table. The house featured multiple levels, elaborate security systems drawn in a child's hand, and what appeared to be several escape routes. Each room was labeled with careful block letters: safe kitchen, quiet bedroom, happy living room. You're quite an architect, William observed, genuinely impressed by the complexity of the designs. What gave you the idea to create this special house? My therapist says I should draw what makes me feel safe, the boy replied, his attention returning to his drawing. Regular houses have windows and doors that let dangerous people in. My house only lets in good people. The simple statement hit William like a physical blow. This child, who should have been playing with friends or learning to ride a bicycle, was instead designing fortresses to protect himself from a world that had already failed him. William felt a familiar surge of the helplessness that sometimes overwhelmed him during these visits. James is one of our most gifted patients, Dr. Harrison said, approaching their table. He's been with us for 4 months now, and his architectural skills have become quite remarkable. Haven't they, James? James nodded solemnly, then looked directly at William. Do you live in a safe house? The question caught William off guard. How could he explain palaces and security details to a child who equated safety with walls high? Enough and doors strong enough to keep out the darkness he had already experienced? I live in a house with my family, William answered carefully. We work very hard to make sure it's a place where everyone feels safe and loved. That's good, James said, returning to his drawing. Everyone should have a safe house. Meanwhile, Kate had moved to another area where several children were engaged in what appeared to be a group therapy session disguised as story time. A young therapist was reading from a book about a little bear who had lost his way in the forest, and the children were invited to suggest ways the bear might find his path home. Maybe the bear could follow the stars, suggested a girl who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Or maybe he could ask the other animals for help, added another child, slightly older. Kate listened as each child contributed ideas, noticing how their suggestions often reflected their own situations. The child who suggested following the stars mentioned that her mother used to point out constellations before she died. The boy who talked about asking for help admitted that he had been too scared to tell anyone about his problems before coming to the hospital. These story sessions are incredibly valuable, whispered the therapist during a quiet moment. Children often find it easier to discuss difficult emotions when they're projected onto fictional characters. As the morning progressed, both William and Kate found themselves deeply affected by the resilience they witnessed. Despite their traumatic experiences, these children continued to hope, to create, and to reach out for connection with others. Their trust, given despite every reason to withhold it, was both humbling and inspiring. During a brief break, Dr. Harrison led them to a quiet observation room where they could process what they had seen. "How are you both feeling?" she asked gently. Kate was the first to respond, her voice slightly strained with emotion. "These children are extraordinary. Their strength is remarkable, but it breaks my heart that they need to be so strong at such young ages." William nodded, still processing his conversation with James. "I keep thinking about my own children, how protected and innocent they are. These children have been forced to grow up in ways that no child should have to. That's a natural response," Dr. Harrison assured them. "Most visitors experience similar emotions. What's important is channeling those feelings into positive action. These children don't need pity. They need understanding, support, and most importantly, hope for their futures." As they prepared to continue their visit, William found his thoughts, returning to the silent door at the end of the hallway. The children they had met were making progress, however slow and difficult. But what about the children behind that door? What happened to young minds so damaged that they couldn't even engage with the therapeutic environment they had just witnessed? Dr. Harrison, he said as they prepared to leave the main ward. "I keep thinking about the sanctuary room you mentioned. When would be an appropriate time to visit?" Dr. Harrison checked her watch and consulted her tablet. "Actually, now might be perfect timing. The afternoon light in that room is particularly soothing, and our most withdrawn patients sometimes respond better to visitors during this time of day." Kate took William's hand as they walked back down the hallway, both of them mentally preparing for whatever lay beyond the door that had captured William's attention. Neither of them could have predicted that behind that door, a vision awaited. That would change their understanding of human resilience and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. The sanctuary room door opened silently under Dr. Harrison's gentle touch, revealing a space unlike anything William and Kate had seen in the hospital. Soft, natural light filtered through specially designed windows that cast no harsh shadows. The room was circular, with curved walls painted in the softest shades of blue and green, colors chosen for their calming psychological effects. "Please move slowly and speak quietly," Dr. Harrison whispered as they entered. "Sudden movements or loud sounds can trigger severe anxiety responses in these children." The room contained 6 children, each in their own carefully created space. Some sat in specially designed chairs that could rock or swivel according to their needs. Others lay on comfortable mats surrounded by soft pillows and weighted blankets that provided the deep pressure many traumatized children found soothing. In the center of the room sat a girl who appeared to be about 9 years old. Her long, dark hair fell like a curtain around her face as she stared intently at something in her lap. She was completely motionless, so still that for a moment William wondered if she was breathing. "That's Lily," Dr. Harrison explained in barely audible tones. "She witnessed her parents' death in a house fire 8 months ago. She managed to save her baby brother, but the trauma left her in a state we call selective mutism with catatonic episodes. She hasn't spoken since the night of the fire." Kate felt tears spring to her eyes as she watched the little girl. Despite her stillness, there was something captivating about her presence. Her fingers moved slightly, and William realized she was holding a small photograph. "She carries that picture everywhere," Dr. Harrison continued. "It's the only family photo that survived the fire. Sometimes she traces the faces with her finger, but she never speaks about it." As they moved quietly through the room, William noticed each child's story written in their posture and behavior. A boy of about 12 sat rocking rhythmically in a corner, his arms wrapped tightly around his knees. Twin girls, perhaps 7 years old, sat facing each other but never made eye contact, communicating through a complex system of hand gestures that no one else could understand. "How do you help children who can't or won't communicate?" Kate asked, her voice filled with professional curiosity mixed with maternal concern. "We've learned that healing doesn't always require words," replied a soft voice from the corner of the room. A young woman in her 30s approached them. She wore no white coat, no name tag, just comfortable clothes that wouldn't intimidate a frightened child. "This is Maria Santos, our specialist in nonverbal therapy techniques," Dr. Harrison introduced her. "She's developed some revolutionary methods for reaching children who have retreated completely from verbal communication." Maria smiled warmly at the royal couple. "Your Royal Highnesses, what we've discovered is that children like these are still communicating constantly. We just need to learn their language." She gestured toward a wall covered with what initially appeared to be random scribbles and marks. On closer inspection, William realized these were communication attempts, drawings, symbols, and patterns that meant something significant to their creators. "Each mark tells a story," Maria explained. "This spiral here represents how one child feels when he remembers his trauma, everything spinning out of control. These dots arranged in a circle show how another child sees her family, separate but connected, always watching over her." As they moved deeper into the room, William found himself drawn again to Lily, the girl with the photograph. Something about her reminded him of his own daughter, Charlotte, the way she held her head, perhaps, or the delicate way her small fingers gripped the precious photo. "May I sit near her?" he asked Maria. "Of course, but please don't expect any response. She's been aware of visitors before, but rarely acknowledges their presence." William carefully lowered himself to the floor about 3 feet away from Lily, close enough to share her space without invading it. Kate joined him, settling gracefully despite her formal attire. For several minutes, they simply sat in comfortable silence. The room's atmosphere was peaceful, almost meditative. William found himself thinking about the nature of grief and how differently it affected people, especially children who lacked the emotional vocabulary to process such overwhelming experiences. Then something extraordinary happened. Lily's head lifted slightly, just enough for William to catch a glimpse of her eyes. They were remarkably expressive, not vacant or distant as he had expected, but filled with an intelligence that seemed to take in everything around her. "Hello, Lily," he said very softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "My name is William." Lily's fingers stilled on the photograph. For a moment, William thought she might respond, but instead, she slowly extended the photo toward him, not quite offering it, but showing him what she held so dear. The photograph showed a happy family, mother, father, and Lily, all smiling at the camera. In the background was their baby brother, barely visible in his father's arms. It was clearly taken at a happier time, probably during a family celebration or holiday. "They look like they loved you very much," William said gently, studying the faces in the photograph with genuine interest rather than pity. Lily pulled the photo back against her chest, but for the first time since they had entered the room, she maintained eye contact with William for several seconds. Her lips moved slightly, as if she were trying to form words, but no sound emerged. Kate, who had been watching this interaction with growing amazement, spoke for the first time since entering the room. "Lily, you were very brave to save your brother. Your parents would be so proud of you." The effect of these words was immediate and startling. Lily's eyes filled with tears, and her small body began to shake almost imperceptibly. Maria quickly moved closer, ready to provide comfort if needed, but she didn't intervene immediately. "She's having an emotional breakthrough," Maria whispered to Dr. Harrison. "This is the first time she's shown any emotional response to mention of her family since she arrived." What happened next took everyone by surprise. Lily slowly reached into her pocket and withdrew a second photograph, one that none of the staff had ever seen before. This picture showed only Lily holding her baby brother, both of them smiling. She had been hiding this photo, keeping it as her most precious secret. She looked directly at Kate and, with tremendous effort, whispered a single word: "Safe." The word hung in the air like a prayer. It was the first sound Lily had made in 8 months, and it represented not just a breakthrough in her treatment, but a fundamental shift in her relationship with the world around her. Dr. Harrison's eyes filled with tears as she made notes on her tablet. Maria knelt beside Lily, offering gentle support as the little girl continued to tremble with the effort of communication. "Lily," Kate said softly, "you kept your brother safe. You are a hero." Lily nodded once, a small but definitive movement that indicated understanding and acceptance. Then, with careful deliberation, she placed both photographs on the floor between herself and the royal couple, sharing her most precious possessions with people who had somehow earned her trust in the space of just a few minutes. William felt overwhelmed by the honor Lily had given them. This child, who had lost everything and retreated completely from human contact, had chosen to emerge from her silence in their presence. The weight of that trust was both humbling and inspiring, as they prepared to move to other children in the room. William realized that they had just witnessed something that would change their perspective on healing, resilience, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. Lily had given them a gift far more valuable than any royal treasure. She had shown them that hope could survive even the most devastating losses. The breakthrough with Lily seemed to shift the entire atmosphere of the sanctuary room. Other children began to stir from their withdrawn states, as if her single whispered word had awakened something dormant in their shared space. William and Kate found themselves at the center of what Maria later described as the most remarkable therapeutic session she had ever witnessed. The boy, who had been rocking in the corner, slowly uncurled his arms from around his knees. His name was David, and according to his chart, he had not made eye contact with anyone since arriving at the hospital 3 months earlier. Now he was watching William with curious, intelligent eyes. David experienced severe bullying at his previous school, Dr. Harrison explained quietly. The trauma was so severe that he developed what we call social phobia with agoraphobic tendencies. He's terrified of being judged or hurt by other people. William remembered his own experiences with public scrutiny and the pressure of constantly being watched and evaluated. While his circumstances were vastly different from David's, he understood something about the fear of judgment. "You know, David," William said, speaking to the boy but not moving closer, "I spend a lot of time worrying about what other people think of me, too. Sometimes it makes me want to hide in my room and never come out." David's rocking slowed to a stop. His head tilted slightly, processing this unexpected confession from someone who seemed so confident and secure. "The thing is," William continued, "I've learned that most people aren't really judging us as harshly as we think they are. They're usually too busy worrying about their own problems." For the first time in months, David's lips curved upward in what might have been the beginning of a smile. He didn't speak, but he raised one hand in a small wave, a gesture so simple yet so significant that Maria had to turn away to compose herself. Meanwhile, Kate had gravitated toward the twin girls, who communicated only with each other through their mysterious hand signals. Their names were Amy and Sarah, identical sisters who had been abandoned by their parents and had spent 2 years in an abusive foster home before being rescued and brought to the hospital. "They've created their own language," Maria explained, as Kate watched the girls' intricate hand movements. "It's actually quite sophisticated. They've developed signs for emotions, needs, fears, and even abstract concepts like hope and dreams." Kate, who had studied psychology before her marriage, was fascinated by the adaptation these children had made to their circumstances. "Have you tried learning their language to communicate with them?" "We have," Maria replied, "but they only use it with each other. It's their way of maintaining control over their communication and protecting themselves from adult figures who might hurt them." Kate sat cross-legged on the floor near the twins, careful not to intrude on their space. She began to mimic some of their simpler hand gestures, not trying to communicate but simply showing respect for their unique form of expression. Amy, the slightly larger of the two girls, noticed Kate's attempts at their sign language. She exchanged a rapid series of gestures with her sister, their conversation too quick for any observer to follow. Then, in a gesture that stunned everyone watching, Amy slowly signed something directly to Kate. "What did she sign?" Kate asked Maria urgently. Maria's voice was filled with excitement. "She asked if you have sisters. It's the first time either of them has attempted to communicate with an adult since they arrived." Kate's face lit up with joy. She held up 2 fingers and nodded, then pointed to herself and made a gesture that seemed to indicate sister in the twins' language. The girls looked at each other with wide eyes, then both turned to face Kate directly. Sarah, who had never initiated contact with an adult, slowly held up one finger and pointed to Amy, then to herself. "She's telling you that Amy is her sister," Maria translated, her voice thick with emotion. What followed was a halting but determined attempt at 3-way communication. The twins took turns showing Kate their signs for different emotions and concepts, while Kate responded with nods, smiles, and attempts to mirror their gestures. It wasn't perfect communication, but it was the first time these traumatized children had chosen to include an adult in their private world. Dr. Harrison observed all of these interactions with growing amazement. In her 20-year career, she had never seen such rapid responses from severely withdrawn children. Something about William and Kate's genuine presence, their lack of clinical detachment, seemed to be reaching these young patients in unprecedented ways. As the afternoon progressed, even the most withdrawn children in the room began to show subtle signs of engagement. A girl named Jessica, who had not moved from her mat in weeks, sat up to watch the interactions around her. A boy called Marcus, who typically covered his eyes whenever adults entered the room, was peeking through his fingers with obvious curiosity. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Harrison whispered to Maria. "I've never seen anything like this response." The most remarkable moment came when Lily, who had been quietly observing all of these interactions while still clutching her photographs, slowly stood up. Everyone in the room held their breath as she took 3 careful steps toward William and Kate. With tremendous effort, clearly fighting against months of self-imposed isolation, Lily extended her hand toward William's. Her fingers were shaking, and she looked ready to flee at any moment, but she held her ground. William very carefully took her small hand in his much larger one. "Thank you for trusting us, Lily," he said softly. Lily's response shocked everyone in the room. With her hand still in William's, she looked around at all the other children and said, in a voice barely above a whisper, "Friends." It was her second word in 8 months, and it carried the weight of a profound realization. These children, who had been isolated in their individual traumas, were recognizing their connection to each other and to the adults who cared for them. The twins immediately stood and moved closer to the group. David uncurled completely from his defensive position and took several steps toward them. One by one, the other children in the room began to move closer, drawn by something they couldn't name but desperately needed. "They're forming a group," Maria observed in amazement. "These children who couldn't tolerate being near others are choosing to come together." Kate felt tears streaming down her face as she watched these brave children overcome their fears and reach out for human connection. Each small movement toward the group represented a victory over trauma, a choice to trust despite every reason not to. William found himself thinking about his own children again, but this time with a different perspective. His own kids were blessed, with security and love, but these children had something else, a hard-won strength and resilience that was inspiring to witness. "You're all so brave," he said to the group of children, who had now formed a loose circle around him and Kate. "Each one of you is a hero for being here, for trying to heal, for not giving up." Lily squeezed his hand and looked around at her fellow patients. For the first time since the fire, she seemed to see beyond her own pain to recognize the struggles of others. "We help each other," she said, her voice growing slightly stronger with each word. In that moment, William and Kate realized they were witnessing something extraordinary, not just individual healing, but the birth of a community. These children, brought together by tragedy, were finding strength in their shared experience and hope in their mutual support. As the session came to an end, none of the children wanted to return to their individual spaces. They had discovered something powerful in their connection to each other, and they were reluctant to let it go. The hours that followed Lily's breakthrough felt like a gentle earthquake that shook the very foundations of everything William and Kate thought they knew about healing and human resilience. Word of what had happened in the sanctuary room spread quietly through the hospital staff, and Dr. Harrison found herself fielding calls from colleagues who had heard impossible rumors about withdrawn children suddenly engaging with visitors. As evening approached, William and Kate remained at the hospital, unable to tear themselves away from these remarkable children who had so unexpectedly opened their hearts. The original schedule for their visit had long since been abandoned, replaced by something far more meaningful than any planned tour could have provided. In the main ward, something unprecedented was happening. Children from the sanctuary room had asked to join the other patients for dinner, something none of them had done since arriving at the hospital. Lily walked slowly beside William, her hand still occasionally reaching for his when she felt overwhelmed by the social interaction. "This is completely uncharted territory for us," Dr. Harrison confided to Kate, as they watched the children navigate their first shared meal in months. "We've never seen such rapid social integration from our most withdrawn patients." The dining room buzzed with a different energy than it had that morning. Children who had worked alone at separate tables were now sitting together, sharing not just space, but tentative conversations. David, the boy who had been rocking in the corner, was showing his architectural drawings to James, the young designer. They had met earlier. "Look at this tower," James was saying, pointing to one of David's sketches. "It's even better than mine because it has places for friends to visit safely." David beamed at the compliment, his first genuine smile in months lighting up his entire face. "Maybe we could design a house together," he suggested shyly. "A house big enough for all of us." The twins, Amy and Sarah, had positioned themselves at a table where they could see everyone while still maintaining their sense of security. They were teaching some of their hand signals to other children, creating bridges of communication that transcended their individual traumas. Kate found herself sitting with a group of children who peppered her with questions about her own family. Their curiosity was touching, especially knowing how difficult it was for many of them to trust adults. "Do you hug your children every day?" asked Emma, the little girl they had seen drawing the house with no doors that morning. "Yes," Kate replied honestly. "Every single day, sometimes many times a day." "I used to get hugs every day, too," Emma said wistfully. "Before the accident." "Would you like a hug now?" Kate asked gently. Emma nodded eagerly and practically launched herself into Kate's arms. The hug was fierce and desperate, the embrace of a child who had been starved for maternal affection. Kate held her close, fighting back tears as she felt the little girl's whole body relax against her. "You know," Kate whispered into Emma's ear, "hugs are special because you can never run out of them. Every time you give one away, you have even more to share." Emma pulled back to look at Kate's face, studying her expression carefully. "Really? Really," Kate confirmed, "and I think there are lots of people here who would love to share hugs with you." William, meanwhile, found himself in an intense conversation with Marcus, the boy who usually covered his eyes when adults approached. Marcus had removed his hands from his face entirely and was speaking with an intensity that suggested he had been saving up words for months. "My mom always told me that princes live in castles and never have problems," Marcus said, his young voice filled with confusion. "But you seem sad sometimes, like us." William was struck by the child's perceptiveness. "You're very observant, Marcus. The truth is, everyone has problems sometimes, even princes. The difference is that some people have more help dealing with their problems than others." "Is that why you came here? To help us with our problems?" William paused, considering how to answer honestly without overwhelming the boy. "I came here because I wanted to meet you and learn from you. But I think maybe we're helping each other." Marcus nodded seriously, as if this made perfect sense to him. "My therapist says that sometimes the best way to feel better is to help other people feel better too." "Your therapist is very wise," William agreed. As the evening continued, the children began sharing stories about their families, their fears, and their hopes for the future. It was the kind of natural group therapy that no amount of professional intervention had been able to achieve, born from their own willingness to trust and connect. Lily, who had been quietly listening to the conversations around her, suddenly stood up. The dining room fell silent as everyone turned to look at her. She was still clutching her photographs, but her posture was straighter, more confident than it had been all day. "I want to tell you about my family," she said, her voice small but clear. Dr. Harrison quickly signaled to the staff to continue their activities quietly while paying close attention to this breakthrough moment. Lily held up the first photograph, the one showing her whole family. "This is my mom and dad and my baby brother Tommy. We were very happy." Her voice wavered, but she continued. "There was a fire in our house at night. I heard Tommy crying and I got him out, but I couldn't save. Mom and Dad?" The room remained completely silent, every child and adult giving Lily the respect her courage deserved. "Tommy lives with our aunt now," Lily continued, showing the second photograph. "She says I can see him when I get better, but I was scared that if I talked about what happened, it would make it real again." Emma was the first to respond. She walked over to Lily and took her hand. "It's already real," she said with the simple wisdom of childhood. "But talking about it makes it hurt less." Other children began to nod in agreement. They understood, perhaps better than any adult could, the weight of carrying terrible memories alone. "My parents died in a car crash," Emma shared. "For a long time I thought if I didn't talk about it, maybe they would come back, but they're still gone whether I talk about it or not." David stood up next. "Kids at my school said I was weird and stupid. They pushed me down and called me names every day. I stopped talking because I thought if I was quiet enough, maybe they wouldn't notice me anymore." One by one, the children began sharing their stories, not because they were forced to by therapists or encouraged by well-meaning adults, but because they had found their own community of understanding. They spoke about loss, fear, abuse, and abandonment with a matter-of-fact courage that left the adults in the room humbled. William found himself thinking about the power of shared experience. These children had found something in each other that no amount of individual therapy had been able to provide, the understanding that they were not alone in their pain. As the evening wound down, the children were reluctant to separate. Many of them asked if they could sleep in the same room, a request that the hospital had never received before from their most withdrawn patients. "We'll have to make some adjustments to our protocols," Dr. Harrison told William and Kate as the children were finally convinced to return to their individual rooms with promises that they could spend more time together the next day. "You've witnessed something remarkable today," Maria added. "These children have formed bonds in a single day that we've been trying to facilitate for months." Kate was exhausted but exhilarated. "They taught us so much more than we could ever teach them. Their capacity for healing and helping each other is incredible." William nodded, still processing everything they had experienced. "I keep thinking about what Lily said, that they help each other. They've created their own support system." As they prepared to leave the hospital, Lily approached William one final time. She was carrying something new, a drawing she had made during art therapy that afternoon. "This is for you," she said, holding out the paper. The drawing showed a house, but unlike the fortress-like drawings they had seen earlier, this house had open doors and windows filled with warm, yellow light. Stick figures of children and adults stood in the doorway, their arms outstretched in welcome. "It's a house where everyone is safe and no one has to be alone," Lily explained. William knelt down to her level, accepting the precious gift. "Lily, this is the most beautiful house I've ever seen. Thank you for sharing it with me." "Will you come back and visit us?" she asked. "Yes," William promised. "We'll definitely come back." As they drove away from the hospital that evening, both William and Kate were quiet, lost in their thoughts about the day's events. They had entered the hospital that morning as visitors offering comfort to traumatized children. They were leaving as witnesses to one of the most profound demonstrations of human resilience and healing they had ever experienced. "Those children changed something in me today," Kate finally said as they watched the hospital disappear behind them. William reached for her hand. "They showed us what real courage looks like, and what real healing can accomplish when people support each other." Neither of them knew that their visit would become a turning point, not just for the children they had met, but for their own understanding of their roles as public figures and their responsibility to those who suffered in silence. 6 months later, Prince William stood before the same hospital entrance, but everything about this moment felt different. The nervous energy that had characterized his first visit had been replaced by eager anticipation. In his hands, he carried architectural plans, detailed blueprints for a new wing of the hospital that would be dedicated to community-based healing programs. Kate walked beside him, carrying a large portfolio containing dozens of drawings, poems, and letters that had arrived at Kensington Palace from children around the world who had heard about the remarkable group at St. Mary's Hospital. The story of the children who had found healing through connection had spread far beyond the hospital walls, inspiring similar programs in hospitals across the country. "Are you ready for this?" Kate asked as they approached the familiar doors. William smiled, thinking about the phone calls they had received from Dr. Harrison over the past months. Updates about the incredible progress the children were making. "I've been ready for this visit since the day we left." The lobby looked different, too. Where there had once been generic, cheerful decorations, the walls now displayed a rotating gallery of artwork created by the hospital's patients. The centerpiece was Lily's drawing of the open house, professionally framed and accompanied by a small plaque that read, "A House Where Everyone is Safe, by Lily, age 9. Dr. Harrison greeted them with a smile that reached her eyes. "Your Royal Highnesses, welcome back. I can't wait for you to see how much has changed." As they walked through the corridors, the transformation was immediately apparent. Children who had once sat alone were now working together on collaborative projects. The sound of laughter echoed from therapy rooms that had once been silent. Most remarkably, the sanctuary room door stood wide open, no longer needed as a separate space for the most withdrawn children. "We've had to completely restructure our treatment approach," Dr. Harrison explained as they walked. "What started with your visit has evolved into something we're calling peer-supported healing. The children are not just patients anymore. They're active participants in each other's recovery. They entered what had once been the main ward to find it transformed into a bustling community center. Children of all ages worked together on various projects. In one corner, James and David were leading a group of younger children in designing and building what they called dream houses, architectural models that represented their hopes for the future rather than their fears of the past. "William, Kate," called a familiar voice. They turned to see Lily running toward them, her arms outstretched. The transformation in the little girl was remarkable. Gone was the withdrawn, silent child they had first met. In her place was a vibrant 9-year-old with bright eyes and a confident smile. "Lily!" Kate exclaimed, kneeling down to catch the girl in a fierce hug. "Look how much you've grown!" "I've been waiting for you to come back," Lily said, practically bouncing with excitement. "I have so much to show you." She led them to a corner of the room where a large bulletin board displayed photographs and updates about the children's progress. There were pictures of David giving a presentation about architecture to a group of university students. Photos showed the twins, Amy and Sarah, teaching their sign language to other children and even some of the hospital staff. "And look at this," Lily said proudly, pointing to a newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local Children's Hospital receives international recognition for innovative healing program." "The Queen herself sent us a letter," Dr. Harrison added, producing an official document. "She's invited our children to visit Buckingham Palace next month to share their story with other children who might benefit from their experience." William felt a surge of pride, not just in the recognition the program was receiving, but in the children who had become advocates for healing and hope. "This is incredible. You've all become teachers as well as students." "That's exactly what happened," said Maria Santos, joining their group. "These children discovered that helping others heal was actually helping them heal faster. It's revolutionized our understanding of childhood trauma recovery." Emma approached the group, no longer the withdrawn child who had drawn houses with no doors. She was leading a younger boy by the hand, a new patient who had just arrived at the hospital. "This is Tommy," Emma explained to William and Kate. "He just came here yesterday, and he's scared like we all were. But we're going to help him feel safe." William realized that the new boy was actually Lily's baby brother, the child she had saved from the fire. He was now old enough to walk and talk, and his presence seemed to fill Lily with joy rather than painful memories. "Tommy gets to visit me here every week now," Lily explained, gently ruffling her brother's hair. "And when I'm ready to leave the hospital, we're going to live together with our aunt. But the best part," Tommy added in a small voice, "is that Lily talks to me now. She tells me stories about Mommy and Daddy, and she's not sad when she talks about them anymore." Kate felt tears spring to her eyes as she watched the siblings interact. Lily had not only found her own voice again, but had learned to use it to comfort others. The afternoon was filled with presentations and demonstrations, as the children eagerly shared their progress. David had overcome his social phobia so completely that he was now mentoring other children who struggled with bullying. The twins had developed their sign language into a formal communication system that was being studied by linguistics professors. Marcus, the boy who used to cover his eyes around adults, had become the hospital's unofficial greeter, helping new children feel welcome and safe during their first days. "Every child who comes here now is paired with one of our experienced patients," Dr. Harrison explained. "Peer mentorship has proven more effective than any traditional therapy we've ever tried." As the visit continued, William and Kate learned about the expansion plans that their initial visit had inspired. The new wing would include family therapy rooms where siblings and relatives could participate in the healing process, community, spaces where former patients could return to help current ones, and training centers where the children's innovative approaches to healing could be taught to medical professionals worldwide. "You started something extraordinary here," William told the group of children gathered around them. "Your courage in choosing to trust and help each other has inspired people all over the world." Lily stepped forward, representing the group. "We learned that hiding from scary things doesn't make them go away, but facing them together makes us stronger than facing them alone." "And," added David with a grin, "we learned that princes and princesses are just people too, and people can help each other no matter who they are." As their visit drew to a close, the children presented William and Kate with a special gift, a collaborative artwork that depicted children from around the world holding hands around a globe. Each child was drawn in a unique style, representing the different patients who had contributed to the piece. "This is for your house," Lily explained, "so you remember that no matter how big your house is, it's always better when it's filled with friends." William carefully accepted the artwork, understanding that it represented far more than a simple drawing. It was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the transformative power of human connection. As they prepared to leave, every child in the hospital gathered in the main corridor to say goodbye. The scene was a stark contrast to their first visit. Instead of withdrawn, frightened children, they were surrounded by confident, caring young people who had learned to transform their pain into purpose. "Thank you," Kate said to the assembled group, "for teaching us that healing isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose to do, especially when you do it together." The children cheered and applauded as William and Kate walked toward the exit. But this time, their departure didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the continuation of a story that had begun with a simple decision to open a door and step into a room where miracles were waiting to happen. As they drove away, William reflected on how profoundly their lives had been changed by these remarkable children. They had entered that sanctuary room 6 months ago as visitors offering comfort. They were leaving as part of a community dedicated to proving that no one has to heal alone. "They're going to change the world," Kate said softly, watching the hospital fade behind them. William nodded, thinking about the ripple effects of courage and compassion. "They already have." The vision that had so deeply moved them both that first day had become a reality that would continue to inspire healing and hope for generations to come. Behind that door, they had found not just suffering children, but young teachers who would show the world that the strongest fortresses are built not from walls that keep others out, but from bonds that bring people together.